5 things about healthy eating that I genuinely do not believe anymore. Some of these might annoy some of you, but honestly, I just don't care. Today's a little different. No lesson, no framework walkthrough, just 5 things I've landed on after years of trying to make healthy eating actually work, both for my own family and for the women I coach. And I want to be upfront about something before we get into it, because these aren't opinions I picked to be provocative. Every one of these came from watching the same pattern show up over and over in my own kitchen and from the women I've worked with. Smart women, women who already know a lot about nutrition, who still end up stuck in the exact same place. So these 5 things are really just 5 places I kept seeing people get stuck and what was actually going underneath. So, number 1, clean eating and healthy eating are truly not the same thing. I actually believe in clean eating. Better ingredients, less processed junk, food closer to what it started as. So I'm not knocking that. But here's the thing that nobody talks about. Here's the thing nobody talks about. A clean cookie is still a cookie. It's made with almond flour instead of white flour or coconut sugar instead of cane sugar and organic ingredients and this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, it's still a cookie. That doesn't make it something that's actually nutritious. Okay, it doesn't make it dinner and it doesn't make it a meal. And here's why this actually matters. Not just as like some semantic point because I want to call it out, but it's because your body doesn't respond to a clean ingredient. It responds to what's actually going on the plate together all at the same time. So a plate of clean organic crackers and clean cold pressed juice is still mostly fast digesting carbohydrates with almost nothing to slow it down. Okay, so your blood sugar isn't going to check the ingredient list before it spikes. It's just going to spike whether or not the ingredients are clean. And this is how a lot of women end up eating cleaner and then feeling worse. Okay. Clean snacks stacked on top of clean snacks isn't still a plate. And I can attest to this firsthand because I got into this trap for a long time too. But what actually makes something healthy in the way that matters is stable energy, fewer cravings, no 3 p.m. crash, isn't actually about ingredient purity, okay? It's about whether the plate has protein, fiber, and fat sitting alongside the carbohydrates, slowing everything down. So I've spent years as a mom trying to figure out how to make healthy eating work in my real household with 3 teen boys, not just a Pinterest one. Okay. And the distinction between clean and healthy is one of the first things that actually mattered. Clean is about ingredients. Healthy is about the whole plate. Okay. And the whole day and the whole pattern, not just one snapshot. They're all related. They're not interchangeable. And I think a lot of the confusion around food right now comes from treating them like they are. Okay. Number 2, you don't have to quit carbs. All right. You just can't eat them alone. And this is something that I see quite a lot because they're like, oh, if you want a snack, have some fruit. Yeah, that's a great idea, but it's also a carb and it's a naked carb. Okay. And this is the rule. And it's really simpler than anything you're probably being told about carbs, okay? So here's what's happening in your body when you eat a carbohydrate by itself. So say it's a bowl of rice, a slice of bread, or fruit, right? With nothing else with it. Your body is going to break this down fast, all right? It's going to dump a wave of glucose into your bloodstream quickly, and then your pancreas is going to respond, and it matches a wave of insulin to bring it back down, all right? And that round trip, the fast rise and the fast drop, is what a crash feels like. Okay. So that fog 20 minutes later, that sudden hunger that shows up way too soon after you just ate, that's what this feels like. All right. But now I want you to picture that same rice next to grilled chicken and a pile of vegetables. The protein and the fiber physically slow down how fast your stomach empties and how fast the carbohydrates hit your bloodstream. All right. So it's the same rice, same calories, but the glucose rises more slowly and comes back down more gently instead of crashing. And that changes a lot of things because there's no dramatic spike, there's no dramatic drop, and there's suddenly no crash driven hunger for something sweet later. Okay. So it's the same food. It's just completely different in how your body's experiencing it because of what's sitting next to it on the plate. And at the end of the day, this is why so many women are like, I can't have carbs. And then they're grinding through it. They're like, okay, I'm not going to eat them. But then they just totally are like, yep, I need them all over again. Okay. You never needed to remove the carbs. You needed to stop eating them by themselves. All right. 3, the scale is not going to tell you first. All right. You're giving the scale way more credit than it actually is. All right. Your energy is going to tell you more than anything else. All right. And it matters a lot because the scale lags behind what's actually happening in your body. Weight on a scale reflects water, inflammation, hormones, muscle, fat, and they're all shifting around at once. Okay. But none of those move in a straight line day to day. Not one. But your blood sugar, on the other hand, starts stabilizing almost immediately when you change how you're eating. And your blood sugar is tied directly to your energy. That's why energy is almost often the very first thing to shift, weeks before the scale is ever going to catch up, if it's going to move in a given stretch at all. All right. So that 3 p.m., like before that number is moving, that afternoon crash is getting a little less brutal. You're going to stop reaching for something at 4 o'clock just to make it for dinner. Okay. You're going to sleep better because the stable blood sugar overnight means fewer of those middle of the night wake ups. Your mood is going to even out because a lot of what feels like an emotional swing is actually a blood sugar swing. All right. And trust me, I've been there. I've been guilty of doing all the things that are not great. All right. But almost everyone skips past a lot of the signals that are not always something that you're thinking about. Okay. Because you just want the number on the scale to tell you that is better. And if you're only measuring it by this number, then you're going to miss the actual evidence that things are working. And that's not a good thing. All right. So number 4, and we kind of just touched on this, but people really aren't talking about blood sugar. Okay. But blood sugar is the actual reason that you're standing in the pantry at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, whatever time, with your hand inside of a bag. And you're like, oh, how did I even get here? Okay. But here's what's going on. Because I think seeing it laid out changes how you think about things in that moment. So when your blood sugar spikes hard from a carb eaten alone, from skipping a meal, and then overeating later, from having coffee on an empty stomach, your body responds hard with an insulin response to bring it back down. And sometimes that response overshoots, and your blood sugar actually drops lower than where it started. And so your brain treats the blood sugar crash as an emergency because glucose is your brain's primary fuel source, and it will demand the fastest fix possible. Okay. That's not a want. That's your brain sending a very urgent signal the same way that it would when you're thirsty. All right. So you're not lacking control. All right. Your body is doing what your body's supposed to do when your blood sugar drops. All right. So anything that's fast is going to work. And that's what your brain is telling you. You're like, I just want those pretzels. Those pretzels are going to make me feel better. And so it's not that your craving is like a bad thing, but it is telling you something. It's your alarm bells going off because something happened either at breakfast or lunch or hours earlier that didn't help you where you wanted to go. And this is the piece that gets left out of so many conversations because everyone's talking about calories or self-control, and nobody's really talking about the mechanism behind why you're getting cravings in the first place. And 5, this one is a big one for me because diets aren't the problem. Fitting food and healthy eating to your life actually is. People spend so much time learning ketos or macro or whatever the new thing is this year. And look, I've been there. I've done the macros, and almost none of that time goes toward the one skill that actually matters. What do you do when you have 0 mental capacity left to think about dinner? And this is why this gap exists. And it's not because anybody is failing at research. Every plan that you've downloaded was designed to assume that you have some sort of decision-making left at the end of the day. Researchers are calling this decision fatigue, and your brain has a limited amount of decision-making capacity daily, and it drains like a battery with every choice that you make. What to wear, which email to answer, whether to fight the shower battle again, right? By 5:30, your battery is like dee, 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 close to empty. And a plan that requires you to decide, am I actually doing the thing that I planned, is asking for capacity that you just don't have left anymore. And this is the real gap, not the information, because most women that I talk to already know more about nutrition than they give themselves credit for. What they don't have a plan is for the version of themselves that's exhausted by 5:30, the version making the 400th decision of the day, and the version who doesn't have it in her to remember which diet she's supposedly following right now. And this is why people quit. okay? Not because they didn't know enough, but because nobody built anything for that tired version of them. Every plan gets built for the version of you with energy left over, the one that's almost never standing in the kitchen at 5:30. And I've been there, so I get it. So look, like now you know the 5 things that I just don't believe anymore. Clean eating isn't the same as eating healthy because your blood sugar doesn't check the ingredients, okay? Carbs are not the enemy. They just can't be by themselves. And the scale lags because it's measuring 5 things at once and energy doesn't. Blood sugar is explaining that 4 p.m. pantry moment better than any sort, and blood sugar explains the 4 p.m. pantry moment better than any story about self-control has ever done. And the last thing is that diet, it's never been the missing piece. A plan for the tired version of you was. And if there's one thread that's running through all 5 of these, it's this. Almost everything that gets called a healthy eating problem is actually a blood sugar problem. Okay? The cravings, the energy, the crashes, the guilt spiral after one hard day, the reason the same plan that worked in January falls apart by March, and all of it traces back to the same handful of mechanisms that I just walked through. But knowing this, as useful as it is, doesn't actually tell you what to put on your plate tonight when you're staring at the fridge with nothing left in you and you have to figure it out, because that's a completely different problem. And that is what I created a guide for. So if any of this landed, I built something free that walks you through this exact moment. It's called What to Make When You Have No Idea What to Make. The link is below. If you need another great place to start, I want you to go take a look at this video next.